All right.
Yeah.
What's going on, people? So, very excited to have coffee time live with you guys. Do us a favor, let us know where you're chiming in from. I'm super excited also because if you haven't realized, we've kind of stepped up our game from when we were at Second Air Force. We were actually laughing because I've got a team here. So Team 19 is here. I have two of our PAs, and then of course y'all remember Master Sergeant Barron. And we were talking, Chief, about how when we did this at Second Air Force, and we did this, by the way, because as a response to kind of COVID, we were all very much in it was COVID, we're not connecting, how can we connect? There's still things that we need to push out to the field, there's still things that we need to connect. So we did this, we started coffee time then. And when we did it, if you go back and look at the ones that we did, it was not great.
Oh, I remember it. I remember looking at you guys connecting like this.
So
are we on? Can we see anything?
There were times where we were sideways, and then the people would run in from the back rooms, and they're like, "You're sideways." So anyway, so we have stepped our game up here in the office of the Chief Master of the Air Force, and Team 19 is bringing it. So we're super excited for that. I'm also very excited that you are my first guest in coffee time.
Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. So for those of y'all that do not know, Chief Master Sergeant Mike, I'm a Saints fan, Perry.
Who that?
This is my wingman and my battle buddy, and will be for the next few years. So he is your Diamond One. He's I just used to call you the CFM for first sergeants, but there's actually a title.
It's actually called the Special Duty Manager.
Fantastic. So Air Force Special Duty Manager for all first sergeants. And I'm very privileged that you get to work with me in our office, and you're a huge person as part of Team 19. So anyway, it's been a busy 7 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
We're starting on, this is week 7. I feel like it's been nonstop, and folks told us that the minute you have your transition ceremony, it will feel like a hurricane. And I'll tell you, that hurricane sucked us in, and then we may or may not get a breather on the weekends, because there's still things going on even on the weekends. But it's been a great hurricane, and so it's been super exciting. And again, we've purposely wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to connect with each of you guys to just have real talk. So that's what this coffee time is. We will do our best to have them routinely, maybe every month or every 6 weeks, with another person that I believe can offer some great sage perspective and to all the airmen and families that are listening. So anyway, so we're just going to get to it. If we don't have any questions, and oh, by the way, whatever questions y'all have, just plug them in. Somebody's going to holler them out, and we're just going to have some real talk. But I have a question for you.
What you got, Chief Master on the Air Force?
So I've known you for a few years now,
cool.
And there were a couple times where you actually had retirement plans, and I think you might have even hit the button. And previous to this assignment, you were the commandant at the First Sergeant Academy,
cool.
and the word got back, Mike Perry's going to retire. We're like, oh. So you're not retired now.
I'm not retired now.
Tell us about that.
I'm not. So first off, Chief, thanks for having me on for your first coffee talk. I got to tell you, the first reason I'm not retired is because you're the Chief Master on the Air Force. And the thing about it is, I know where you're going to take our airmen. You've already proven that. I've known you for quite some time, and just watching how you lead, and then looking at you laying out your priorities of people, readiness, and culture ties directly into what you've been saying for years and years. So I'm proud to serve alongside you.
This guy's good. So just know we didn't practice, we didn't talk, but anyway, appreciate it.
It's chemistry, it's connection. So I think if real personal story about the retirement piece. So at the time, it was 27 years in the first time I was going to hit the button. Actually, no, it was more like 25. Mm-hmm. 25 years in, several assignments in a short amount of time. I have 4 children, Chris, Kiara, Tamia, and Asia. And then they just told me to put my boot down. Good PA folks. And my wife, Melinda, who just retired a few years back. So the thing was, after moving year after year for 3-4 years in a row, I started to take a toll on my kids. And so we had a discussion about, hey, what do we need to do now? What's going to be the next step? So we started planning for the next phase. But at the time, your predecessor, Chief Master of the Air Force number 18, and my boss at the time, General Tyker, had a conversation, say, look, what can we do for you? the thing about it was they weren't trying to talk me out of retirement, but they were saying, what can we do to make sure that you have some stability for your family and allow you the opportunity to keep serving?
Yeah,
that meant a lot.
Yeah.
So I pulled the retirement back. I actually had a approved retirement, and I continued to serve, and they sent me down to the First Sergeant Academy. Next time, same kind of deal. Just got there, did what I thought I was going to do for the next few years, accomplished the goals that we had set, but then there was still so much more to go. But the promise to the children was that that was going to be our last stop.
Yeah.
So as I'm getting ready to hit the retirement button, I did that, and we got farther along, and my wife and my daughter Asia were taking a ride one day, and Asia said, "Hey, Dad, are you sure you want to retire?" I said, "Well, baby, do you want me to retire?" She said, "Well, Daddy, I want you to do what you think is best."
Yeah.
At the time, she was in ROTC, junior ROTC. So I think that by her understanding and getting more perspective on what we do in the military and why we do what we do, changed her mind about what she wanted for us to be able to do. So she said, "Dad, if you want to keep serving, I'll serve with you." That meant the world to me. And then I get a phone call and email from you, and the rest is history. The thing about it, and I guess this is the last thing I'll say on that is, when you have an opportunity to continue serving and doing something that you love doing, I see it like Michael Jordan in the NBA, right? Not that I'm Michael Jordan by no stretch, but when you're doing something that you absolutely love to do, you're getting paid for it, and you get to have the impact that you have on our force, and you're at the position now where you can actually affect change.
Yeah.
How can you say no to that?
I know.
So glad to be served.
But we're gonna go out on top. We're not gonna keep re-upping 4 more years. We're not gonna be like 12 years in the seat or anything.
No.
But here's what you said. You said something that I appreciate, that you were talking with your family about all of this, and that transparency is important. And so I'll be honest, I'm very transparent with my family as well. We have been for many, many years, and we ask our kiddos, "Hey, are you still having fun? What's your thoughts on this?" And there was a time, especially once you become a Chief Master Sergeant, for those who might, it can be challenging at any rank.
Absolutely.
Like full on. I remember I struggled probably most as a tech sergeant. You know, kiddos in the house, going to the CDC, etc. But years of that, you getting hot in here?
Yeah,
What's
I
going
went for a run this morning, 3 miles down. So I'm sitting up here sweating. It's all good.
But you know, it got tough for the kiddos moving around. My oldest daughter went to 3 different high schools.
Yeah.
And so to that end, we're asking them, "Hey, does mommy need to retire?" At that time, my husband had already retired because, you know, it got tough trying to keep us both together. But does mommy need to retire? We ask those things. And again, if we can be all in as a family, that's what matters.
That is what matters. So I appreciate that question. And I got to tell you, I haven't regretted either time pulling the retirement one bit.
Yeah.
Because, again, we continue to make an impact, and the family's on board.
I agree. Well, I'm glad that you're all in. I love watching you and serving with you while you were the commandant at the First Sergeants Academy, because I knew you were doing good things out there. Because at the end of the day, culture doesn't necessarily happen. It doesn't happen at the Pentagon. So at that time, when you have, you know, General Goldfein at the time and Chief Master of the Air Force, right, who killed it and did a phenomenal job, they wanted, and they kept talking about the focus on culture.
Right.
But culture happens at the squadron. Culture happens in the flight. Culture happens in the section. And you were building first sergeants that are crucial to helping to build the culture that we need.
Yeah, so that meant a lot to even get the phone call and talk about, hey, what do we need to do to strengthen our first sergeants, who I see as really change agents who then can help strengthen the squadron.
Yeah.
And the first point that we talked about was just what you just said, that we can try to drive culture all day from policy, but that's not what drives culture.
Yeah.
It's really about that young airman who steps into a flight and the environment that he or she experiences within that flight in the squadron. So what we try to do with first sergeants is just kind of instill those kinds of soft skills. So we talked about, hey, one of the questions we asked is, what are you going to do? How will you be remembered for the culture and the impact that you have on the squadron?
Yeah.
So we talk about things like practicing what you preach with self-care. We talk about things like understanding how to talk to people about interests and positions and negotiation, dispute resolution, and conflict resolution, things like that. We talk to them about how to solve things at the absolute lowest level, and bigger than all that, just making people feel valued.
Yeah.
People want to have input. And culture is really about what we talk about all day with diversity, but bigger than diversity is about trying to leverage that diversity by being inclusive.
So as a junior airman, the most important people in my life at that time were my frontline supervisors. Second to that was probably the senior NCOs in my AO, and First Sergeant being one of them, and that commander.
Yeah.
As a junior airman in a squadron, I didn't know who anybody, I didn't know who the group leadership or the wing leadership was.
Right.
I didn't understand the impact of the Chief Master of the Air Force, nor did I probably care. Again, the most important person is typically your frontline supervisor, which is why they always say that people quit their boss, not their organization. So bosses are important. All right, I'm getting a look.
Yes, so we have our first question, and it is actually for Diamond One. It's from HKM Carroll. Why don't we vector senior master sergeants for first sergeant?
That's a very good question. And I don't know if I have a very good answer right now. I know that historically in the Air Force, what we try to do is get folks at the master sergeant level, because what we're doing is not just an opportunity for them to be able to relate to the airmen in the unit, because again, you think about how it's structured and how it's aligned. Once you go from tech sergeant to master sergeant, you're at that point then what you're now pulling teams together to accomplish the mission. And so master sergeants are just at that key level. If you think about where they are, where they communicate up and down the chain with dealing with the commander and dealing with their peers, who are usually the flight chiefs, and they also have that first, second, third line supervisor role where they have to know their airmen a little bit better. So what we try to do is we get them in as master sergeants, and then we grow them to be senior master sergeants and then chief master sergeants. And that's kind of why we do that. If we pull them at the senior master sergeant level, and if you look at us historically with our numbers and how we promote, once you get to senior master sergeant, yeah, you have a little bit of legs on you, but not so much as when you put on that master sergeant stripe and have it on for about a year. So that's one of the reasons. Interesting fact about this, though, what we do find is that once we vector the best of the best master sergeants to be first sergeants, they wind up, some of them, promoting, doing, say, the first sergeant academy. And then at that point, we have a conversation with the career field managers and with the leadership team about, does it make sense to allow them to continue serving as the first sergeant or not? And more times than not, we allow that to happen. The other piece about that is just the manpower flow. So for master sergeants, there's a certain number in the unit that we say, okay, a master sergeant can take care of that and run that based on the leadership and experience that they develop over the course of their careers. And then you think about the senior master sergeant and the chief master sergeant level, larger units, bigger span. We again want to grow master sergeants into good senior master sergeants, seasoned first sergeants, and then hopefully even better chief master sergeants, whether it's the career field managers or command chiefs or whatever the strategic level chief is at the time. The whole point is to get them early and grow them into those roles. So that hopefully I answered the question. If not, I'll expand.
All right, our next question is from Josh Gatsby. Chief, my question is, what ways can AGRs cross-train and it not affect their AGR status? It's difficult because we would have to change to a red reservist and then try to get a new AGR. Total force question.
Josh, I'm not gonna lie, we're about to have to ask that question to your command chief and get some, I'm not terribly familiar with all the statuses and how you can transfer in between both. So we see your question on the screen. We will make sure that we push that question appropriately and get you an answer back to be able to answer the AGR question.
That's a great question.
Do you know?
I do not. I just know
Okay.
something that we've actually, whether it's Chief Brian Anderson or Chief Tim White at the time now, Chief Williams, are looking into. So if I understood the question correctly, it's just a matter of being able to transfer in and out of statuses.
Within that component. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something that I'm not too smart on, but we will definitely try to dig up an answer for you.
Here's what I will tell you kind of on that component piece. We talk about my priorities and my focus areas being people readiness and culture. So in the people piece, and I'm very focused on talent management, we are looking at how can we have permeability with our airmen and more flexibility that an airman can transfer between reserve, guard, and active duty based on the needs of what's going on in their family, or their particular needs. We have some airmen who sometimes just need to take a knee for maybe a year or 2 years or 5 years. we need to make it easier for our airmen to be able to transfer back and forth. That's true talent management. So I want you all to know that that is something that is on our list of, hey, we need to get after these things. It's nothing easy. So there's a whole lot of things that we've got to get passed through the line, and it all falls in the law piece, but we're about to get after that.
Cool.
All right, continuing along
Don't bring
this.
us any more AGR questions. Okay.
I like that we brought it into your idea of trying to get into making it easier, which is why we wanted to make sure you had that question. Matt Lyon is asking us, can you give some insight on what areas you would like to look into? PT tests, promotions, while in your position.
Absolutely. Hey, Matt, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we are about to get after. I just spent last Monday and Tuesday with the Air Force Senior Enlisted Leader Council. That is your MAGCOM and your Combatant Command Senior Enlisted Leaders, as well as a few of your CFMs, looking at where should be our focus for the next few years. The top of that focus and the top of the priorities is in enlisted force development strategy, where we are holistically looking from E1 to E9 on how do we develop, train, and grow leaders, airmen for the long game, right? I'm not thinking about a short game. How are we really developing the airmen that we need for the long game? And part of that, there's a whole lot of lines of effort in that, and we're trying to just understand it in its entirety. But again, it's holistically. So we're looking at PT tests. We're looking at what is fitness for today's airmen. Is it the same as what we did? And oh, by the way, when we came in the Air Force, just so for all the youngins who only know the 1.5 mile run, when we came in the Air Force, man, we were bike riding.
Yeah.
On a bike, and you know, my Army husband had to tease us because he's like, you're riding a bike, a stationary bike, you're not even going anywhere. He's like, who does that? So anyway, so we are looking at what does fitness look like for the 2030 airmen, 2040 airmen. So we are looking at that. We're looking at talent management, again, on how do we develop our folks, how do we evaluate, how do we do feedback, what does it need to look like? So some of them will take a while for us to really get our hands wrapped around. I'm not interested in a whole lot of Band-Aid fixes, but there are going to be some things that have to have Band-Aid fixes until we can get the more holistic talent management system in line. But we're looking at assignments. We're looking at anything that has to do with people operations, we are looking at. I don't think there's a thing, Chief, that we've talked about that's not. Now, what's really on my mind is resiliency. What's really on my mind is building resilient, strong airmen and families. So that's always on my forefront. The other piece is that readiness aspect, which is, again, how do we train for that high-end fight that we don't even know what that's necessarily going to be? So how are we developing airmen for that? And then most importantly, what are the processes and the policies that can push our airmen out? What are some of the 1990s assignment policies or personnel policies that we just got to fix?
Yeah.
Great question, Matt.
That is a good question. I like what you said about we're not just trying to prepare for what's happening currently.
Yeah.
We're looking at that next fight and the fight
Absolutely.
beyond. And that's what we got to think about as we're working through policies and really hearing from you about what's on your minds. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we do better?
Yeah.
Well, as one of those things that we might be able to do better, J. Will Wilson asks, what are your plans for the holidays and how do you plan to balance work and personal?
Great question. You know, we're all in COVID, man. So it has messed up my holiday planning. My kids are a little bit done because we typically go on vacation for Christmas. We always take block time. I've got a kid in college, and so that's the best time for us to take about 10 days of leave, which we normally go out of country and go enjoy the islands somewhere and soak up the sun and unplug and disconnect from the phone. But doggone it, we're in COVID. So we haven't even been able to think that far as, you know, one of my favorite holidays, which is in fact Christmas and the New Year time frame. My other favorite holiday is Thanksgiving. And so we will unplug a little bit on Thanksgiving. We're flying my college kid here to be home. We will do a lot of eating. We will do a lot of PT. We will do some puzzles, and just spend family time? What are you gonna do?
So we have been thinking about it a little bit, and so our family usually gets together just like a tradition. Wherever we are across the U.S., we always converge on either my mom and dad's house in Hammond, Louisiana, or on my wife's house out in Metter, Georgia. So this time's going to be a little bit different, and so we want to be smart about it. So we're looking at the different platforms of social media. How can we, find ways to maybe Zoom in or FaceTime in and cook together and crack jokes and watch people open presents and all those kind of things. But I think what it's about right now is just figuring out different ways that we can still share in those moments that our family's gonna have across the. Because again, I mean, this is our new normal for now.
So sharing in those moments is key. We are in COVID, and when I was down with AETC as Second Air Force, I would hear from our airmen all the time, hey, we can't take leave. We've got to literally graduate from tech training, go to our first duty station. It's not ideal for them. It's not ideal for any of our folks. I haven't taken leave either. And I told our airmen, I said, I'm not taking leave. If you can't take leave, I'm not taking leave. And this has been rough for all families. We lost out on spring break. We lost out on
prom,
graduation,
summer.
We all have been challenged through all of this. We all have kiddos right now, who are in this together. Right now, I have a 14-year-old. She'd be mad if I said 13, but I got a 14-year-old who's back there doing her school virtually online. I've got dogs running around. Some of y'all have 3 kids on 3 separate devices trying to figure out how to do Google Meets and Zoom, and this is a challenging time. And all most of us just want is to go back to normal. I've had some airmen reach out and say, I'm so over the mask, and I'm like, me too. The only good thing I feel like that happened in 2020 was this right here, if y'all can see that. So Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, but here's the deal. All jokes aside, we will get through this because we're going to get through it together.
Cool.
And we're just going to persevere. We will always remember 2020. I mean, this is something we'll never forget.
Yeah, so I have one more piece to that, because another part of your question was find the balance piece. Anytime you have something like this, I think we also have to look for the opportunities. And, for me, I got back into reading. I got back into playing my trumpet, things I haven't done in many years, because we were kind of locked in, so to speak. I got back into some of those habits that, for me, helped me find some peace, right? Yeah. So I guess my question back to you is, what have you done over the past 6 months to be better version of you?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, no matter what it is, what are you going to do for the next 6 months or so to be a better version of you and your family? So we can find some opportunities here, and I think that we can all be better as a result.
So if I remember right, J. Will also is part of that us mentoring us side. And so here, what they've been doing is, as well as other sites out there, like Air Force Quarantine University, has been connecting with people virtually. This has changed our lives where I'm not kidding. I FaceTime and Zoom people like crazy. Pre-COVID, if you weren't one of my immediate family members, we would never FaceTime. But now post-COVID, man, I'll call anybody in a heartbeat and FaceTime because I want to see your eyes, to include my airmen. All right.
Cool.
So this is for Diamond One from Joseph Drake. Can you talk about where the First Sergeant Special Duty is heading? What's your plan?
Chief Joseph Drake, former First Sergeant, once a diamond, always a diamond. Thanks for the question, brother. So, so right now what we headed is kind of what I kind of alluded to earlier. So the thing about it, what we're looking at is, we want to train First Sergeants, but we're not training First Sergeants just to be First Sergeants in today's environment. We're training First Sergeants to get out there to units and put us out of business, right? I need First Sergeants to train first line supervisors, second line supervisors, and mentor commanders and CDOs on how to take care of their airmen in a way that a First Sergeant knows how to do. So that's where we're headed. And that's why we're teaching all the soft skills at the academy with our Chief John Oliver and the team down there. And that's also why we're not just focusing on things that are core to First Sergeant, but we also talk about manpower. We're talking about money. We're talking about how you can understand funding streams to better take care of your airmen down at your units and know how to provide the necessary input to get the right quality of life initiatives out there. So we're building, with First Sergeants, how we train them, we're building future, no kidding, senior enlisted strategic leaders to be able to guide our force. So yeah, it's definitely a focus on training first sergeants, but it's also about building and developing first sergeants to be, no kidding, phenomenal servant leaders and continue to advance our force. So where are we headed? Man, that's a great question. And 7 weeks into the job with Chief Master in the Air Force, we're kind of sitting down and talking that through, because I don't think it's just going to be internal to first sergeants, but I think we're looking across the board at how we're going to train our airmen to be the best versions of themselves. So again, that's where your inputs come into play. Because I guess the bottom line on it is we have to be prepared for whatever's out there. And instead of one day in the near future, you're talking about peer and near peer, I want to get back to the point where we're saying no one comes close.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question comes from Laurel Brooks. You speak of culture. The other day, Chief, you shared an article about emotional intelligence. How do you think that plays in or changes with the cultures we have in units right now?
So I will tell you that I feel like every person, not just every airman, I feel like every person has got to understand and get after the emotional intelligence piece, meaning, how well do you understand and can you control your own emotions and that of the people around you, understanding, the implications with respect to, your awareness of how you relate to one another. I think every person, so emotional intelligence wasn't even a thing when I was growing up. I wish I knew about emotional intelligence as a young junior NCO, because I probably would have saved myself a whole lot of relationships because of my lack of emotional intelligence. I probably would have saved myself a whole lot of turmoil even within my own house if I would have just understood emotional intelligence enough to control myself and focus on the things that I can control, and also be mindful of how my actions are perceived to others around me. So I think that every workplace needs to probably spend some time doing that. I think in PME, we need to make sure that we are teaching on emotional intelligence, and theoretically we do. We cover on topics that help us be the best version of us that we need to, but I don't think we delve in it enough. And again, you touched on a little bit, the Air Force that we serve in today is different than it was when I first came in. We need people who can think from the neck up, and we need people who are creative, who are innovative, and who can help propel us to where we need to go. Yeah. I'm about to get get in on the why, but no, it'll be 20 minutes and then we won't get any questions. But you guys know, go look back and read the National Defense Strategy on the why, on how, if I can just paraphrase it just a little bit, and I like to do that. It's 11 pages. If you have not read the NDS and you are watching this, I need you to go read it. 11 pages, and I will paraphrase it. What it says to me, Shirt, is America, you've been slipping, and we've allowed ourselves to get comfortable in where we stand, that now we can look around and we have near peer, if not peer, competitors in our world structure right now, and that's not a good place to be. And so we need airmen to think differently. We actually need them to think. So when I came in the military, it was different. We didn't talk unless spoken to, or they asked us to say something. We didn't ask the why. We were just, do what you need to do. We can't live like that anymore. We've got to have airmen who think.
Y'all got her fired up. Y'all got her fired up. And I agree. So the thing about emotional intelligence is it's something, we have to teach it, but it's something that has to be practiced.
Yeah.
So it's and developed, right? So you can't just learn, what it means and how to do it, but you have to actually get out there and you have to practice it in your daily interactions with family, friends, co-workers, and whoever else. So we got to get at that. We got to be competent in our emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Our next question is for Diamond 1 from Tana Chavez. What have we learned about the family care plan during this pandemic? Have we evaluated the need for change into how we use it as a way to put our families at risk with pushing members to meet a requirement ahead of safety?
Very great question, and actually we are looking at that. So what we did learn, and I know a lot of you are already tracking that when the pandemic first kicked off, there was a lot of concern and talk about should we be enacting family care plans. We learned really quickly that it was not necessarily effective to do so for obvious reasons. But the thing about family care plan and the intent behind it is it's a congressional mandate, and it's really just about us commanders actually making sure that we have a ready force able to get after things despite our family situation. That's what it's about. The intent is to make sure you can go and do your job. So can we do that smarter? Absolutely. So we're in talks right now with the A1 team and having some real conversations about what that looks like. Because and just me talking, my own opinion, some of the conversations I've had with my predecessor, Chief Manny Pinheiro, was, man, we already do this VRAD thing that we have in virtual NPM. And the thing about it is, what stops us from going electronic with that and making it something where we're just smarter about it, and the commander can make sure that they haven't reached the intent of what's required, and then press from there. So we're looking at ways to improve that. We're looking at ways to do it better, but we want to make sure that we're not diverging from any congressional mandate. But there'll be more to come on that in the near future here, and we're looking forward to hearing your ideas about how we can get after it as well.
So I will tell you, as the person who's always had to do a family care plan because dual military family, it's good and bad, right? The intent of a family care plan is fantastic because the intent is that there is somebody who can help you look after your children, no matter what the cause is. The challenge was when I used to PCS to Europe, went to Germany 2 times, you got to get your family care plan done in X amount of days. And I remember talking to my neighbors who I just met saying, I know this is a little weird, don't think I'm crazy, but can I put you on my family care plan? Like but I'm not going to use you, So you've got to, but the intent behind it is good because the intent is we are going to need some help. And if I need help and if I'm stationed at a base for the first time and I don't know anybody, I will force myself to get out there and meet fellow wingmen, other families, somebody who can provide the help and assist that I need. So I love the intent. It was always awkward. And I love the fact that we're going to look at it, but yeah.
So personal story on that one. So I had to enact mine on 2 occasions.
Yeah.
The first time, it really wasn't even the folks on my family care plan who helped out. So Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, winter months, my wife wound up getting in a deployment. She goes out. Here I am with 4 kids, 7, 6, 3, and 1, right? 3 girls on the board. I have no hair. I don't know how to do girls' hair, but I learned. Because when my wife left and we had to figure out how to do it because I was working 14, 16-hour shifts at the mental health clinic, it was my young airman that worked with me who decided to help out and step in and help me to do my daughter's hair. It was my wife's team, civilians, who stepped over and said, hey, let us take care of your kids while you go and you take care of business after work late.
Yeah. So
the thing about it, we're such a communal type force that a lot of the things, the intent behind the family care plan, we take care of each other. That's one good thing about the United States Air Force and the military in general is that we take care of each other. We step up and do what needs to be done regardless of what's on paper. So.
To all the people who help take care of kiddos, to even neighbors who are like, hey, let me take your kids or whatever, to, again, family care providers, people who work in CDC, thank you. So just like you, when I deployed, Ron had to take care of 2 sets of girls' hair, and they used to go to CDC with ponytails, like lopsided, and then I get the pictures, and I might be a little bit upset while I'm down.
It's okay, Ron. I feel you, brother.
At the end of the day, they were clean, healthy. They might have ate a lot of Pizza Hut, but they were healthy. But I want to thank the care providers because after so many crazy looking ponytails, they told Ron, just leave a brush in the CDC. We will do their hair. So anyway, awesome. I love how we do bond together. Cool. Shout out.
Our next question comes from Staff Sergeant Jacob Garrettson at Fort Gordon. He wants to know about your legacy and what obstacles can you see in your path and what changes do you plan on leading to help achieve your vision of our Air Force?
Jacob.
Great question.
I don't know what my legacy is going to be. I just want to do a good job for our airmen. What I will say is, leading today is tough. Leading in 2020 and probably 2021 is going to be challenging at best. And so to all the leaders out there, I want to tell you, it is easy to be a leader when nothing's going on, extremely challenging when the chips are down. And so here we are in 2020. We've had a pandemic.
Yep.
That if you would have asked us in January, would this have happened? We could never imagine. We're still in a pandemic.
Yes.
Our economy is where it is right now, you know, a crushed economy in some respects. We have racial disparities, crises going on outside of our fence line and some inside our fence line. We have had a ton of challenges, and so when I think about, especially the pandemic, you know, I think the latest numbers I heard, $26 trillion in debt as a nation. So what does that mean to me? And I'm not going to get ahead of anybody, and I certainly don't want to get ahead of my boss on what does that mean for the United States Air Force as a budget. But if our nation is in debt because of this pandemic, I can only start to, in my mind, plan what that means for the budget that
Yes.
the DoD is going to get, which impacts the budget that the United States Air Force is going to get. And so I'm mentally starting to prepare for the challenges that we might have to experience as an Air Force. But I want every leader out there to mentally prepare for that. Because what I'm hearing is that a flatline budget is probably the best case scenario, but reality is it's probably not. So what does that mean? We're going to have to make some tough decisions, and I hope that you know that we don't take those things lightly. So I think those are some of the things that are going to happen. Despite all of the challenges, man, we got to fight through because there's so much that we have to get after. There's so many things within people operations that we've got to get after in terms of policies and processes to make life better for our airmen today. And so those are the things that I'm going to stay focused on. Of course, our readiness and how do we make sure that we have a ready force, and then the culture piece. But every single one of you is part of that culture piece. We can talk about it here all day long, but we're not living in your squadron and in your flight where maybe you feel like the culture is not there. What is this culture that you speak of, Chief? Because we don't have it. So sure, maybe we need to talk about that, because I hear that from airmen all the time. Matter of fact, I was on a phone call coming back from the Pentagon yesterday talking to somebody about culture and how in their squadron they are personally dealing with toxic leadership. So they say toxic leadership. They're dealing with sexual harassment, all of these things that in my mind I can't comprehend that, but that thing is real. So how do airmen in those squadrons, how do they help shift the culture? How would you shift the culture if that was you?
So that's a great question. It goes back to what we were talking about with you know, everybody being a first sergeant, so to speak. So in my mind, you know, just a little bit of history about first sergeants, how it came about real quick was, you know, the first sergeant to speak up for what's right. The first one to step in to help someone who's hurting. The first one to do whatever it is, just always the first to be there to serve others. That's what being a first sergeant is about.
Yeah.
And I think everyone needs to be just that.
Yeah.
So you think about what that does in any culture, it kind of raises awareness for everybody around. So if everyone's looking out for the other person and not being afraid to speak, then that'll be the start of raising the concerns. Yeah. Another thing about that, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about something that happened with our previous team with showing how leaders should attack and set the right culture. Yeah. There was a young man, there's a young man, I hope you don't mind if I share the story, but he's part of your boss's draft team. Mm-hmm. And your predecessor's draft team. So when he had a daughter who had taken sick with COVID, and busy job, right? So here's how culture works. Here's how you set it. So his daughter got sick and he's out, he's trying to get her to the hospital and get her checked out. And then all of a sudden, you know, fast forward a couple of days, he's at the house trying to recoup and they gave him time off. So he's sitting down and he's, you know, taking a break from everything that's going on and the phone rings. He picks up the phone and say, hello. And the voice on the line said, hey, what's going on? This Dave. And he's like, Dave who? Say, hey, this Dave Goldfein. He jumps up. He's at attention. And he's trying to say, like, what am I do now? What am I going to do now? But the thing was, General Goldfein called him just to say, hey, I'm calling to check in on your son. And he knew the son or the daughter's name. And he said, I just want to make sure everything's okay. And by the way, I know that we have a busy schedule, but don't worry about that. Your team's got you. You take the time to do what you need to do and focus on your family. And then when you get 100%, you come back to work. Yeah. That's culture. Yeah. And what he told me was that what he understood was that there was, for him coming out of the union, came out of before, he said that what he noticed was that, we always think that leaders are saying one thing but doing another, but he got to witness from our most senior leaders how they take time to take care of their airmen and listen and know their names of their kids and whatnot.
I love that.
So there's something that happens between the leadership message and actual culture in the flight unit level that we need to take stock of and figure out what's going on. It goes back to everyone being a first sergeant.
It also goes back to, that was General Goldfein showing a high level of emotional intelligence, knowing what would be meaningful to one of his troops, one of his airmen, and actually doing that thing. But it should absolutely come at our level.
Coming out across the board.
All right, Diamond One, you talked a little bit about how everyone needs to be a first sergeant, but we have Chris Trapp here who wants to become an actual diamond-wearing first sergeant.
Chris Trapp.
So he says, after being selected for a DSD to USAFA, I have career plans to become a SHIRT. Is there going to be a change in the DSD regs to allow a move to a DSD after completing a tour in that program?
I think we already have a provision there that allows for that. So you can actually come out of a DSD and the first sergeant special duty is no longer under the DSD program, so to speak. So it's a little bit on the outskirts of that. So with if you're coming out of a DSD currently and you have a desire to be a first sergeant, you meet all the eligibility requirements, then there could be a conversation that happens with your local leadership as well as your career field manager to make sure it's in the best interest, not just for you, but also for the Air Force. Because what we don't want is for you to spend 4 years in the DSD, then come out and spend another 4 in another special duty, and then so your skills and your actual primary specialty code begins to atrophy. Yeah. So we want to make sure that the whole point of the DSD is to get you out, you get the experience and the growth and the breadth, and then you go back and then you crush it, in your primary specialty. That's the goal of it. So nothing says you can't go back, do a couple of years, shine, rock out, and then be vectored again to be a first sergeant down the road. Or again, you're already a first sergeant if you're doing what you need to do. Cool. But open the conversations and reach out if you have any questions. I'll put you in touch with the right folks.
From one of our newly promoted senior airmen to staff sergeants, found out just last week, this is Senior Airman Jordan Ray at Keesler Air Force Base, asks, Chief, as a newly selected staff sergeant, what 3 things or pieces of advice do you think I should have ready to go in my toolbox?
All right, I'm going to give up 1 or 2 and then give you time to think about it. So Jordan, good to hear from you. Hope Keesler is treating you well. One thing I would probably say is don't burn a bridge. I wish I learned that lesson years ago, because as a junior senior airman, when I think back at all the different ranks that I held, senior airman was the rank shirt that I felt like I knew it all. Just know that. There was a senior airman union going on in my squadron, and I fully felt like I knew it all. And I probably burned a lot of bridges. So don't burn a bridge, man. The more rank that you get and the longer you stay in our Air Force, you realize that it's really a small Air Force. And so part of that don't burn a bridge is also part of EQ, knowing that, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You don't always have to win. And so don't burn a bridge is my first one.
So I think that what you've done so far has gotten you to the point where you're about to become a senior NCO, right? So now you are charged with caring for our mothers, kids, whether it's the sons, daughters, nieces, nephews. That's a huge responsibility. So in order for you to do that effectively, you got to continue to grow. And you can't wait on other people to tell you or send you to a school for one of our 90 days of PME that you may get over the course of your careers. You got to figure out how you're going to do it on your own as well. So my thing is, how are you going to continue to grow so you can continue to grow those airmen that are now under your charge? Don't take that role lightly. And whether it's reading books, whether it's continuing with school, whether it's practicing your emotional intelligence, or whatever it is, the more you grow, the more you can grow others. And your impact from this point on is going to be just freaking ridiculous and phenomenal. because every airman that you lead will grow up to lead other airmen who will lead other airmen. So your leadership from this point on is going to touch airmen for generations to come. Chief talks about the high-end fight on the other side. How are you going to grow yourself to be ready for that fight, but even more so, prepare that young airman under your charge now to do the same.
Hey, and if those of y'all who are listening don't understand what we talk about, when we talk about that high-end fight, I need you to go find your chief, your commander, ask them what that means and how you're connected to that. The other thing that I would say, because I love that, be a lifelong learner. The other thing I would say is be deliberate about your time and prepare. So there was, as I grew up in my career, there was a whole lot of times where I wasn't very deliberate and it was haphazard. And now I'll tell you, time is our most precious commodity. I'm very deliberate about what I do, and not to say that I don't spend a lot of time doing nothing, but if I do nothing, it's deliberately so that I do nothing. Most of the time, I'm spending time just, again, trying to be a better person, trying to be a better mom, a better wife, and a better leader for my folks. So be deliberate about your time. Plan, prepare.
I like that deliberate about doing nothing, because you know what I do in my nothing time?
Yeah.
I'll sit there and I'll binge watch some like Law and Order, SVU, or some kind of crime drama show, and I'll sit there for like 3-4 hours and just.
At least you've been watching that. There's some other silly stuff that we could be binge watching.
I'm not going to call any names of some of the silly shows that are out there, but there are some out there. And I guess another thing is the question you just asked, I would turn it back on you as well. What do you plan to get after? Because you got, I figure staff sergeant, you probably in anywhere between 4 to 7 years or so. What's your plans for the next 15 to 20 years? What is it that you want to get after to change to make our Air Force a better place?
Ooh.
Pick them out and then align your efforts with that. And hopefully those align with our Air Force. And man, you talk about making an impact. You will be deliberate.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Mike Jones. It is for both of you, but first we'll put it to Diamond One, who talked about first sergeants, and everybody can be a first sergeant. First, ask those questions. So what is your plan to eliminate the best that we can suicides in the Air Force?
Mike Jones. Y'all have to go back to know what I'm talking about, that Mike Jones joke. But look, that's something that Chief Master of the Air Force and I, along with the Secretary and her boss, the Chief of Staff, talk about on a daily basis. It's not a day or so that goes by that we don't hear some type of news about something going on out there. Of course, whether it's a suicide or some other event that takes a toll on, just not just our mission, but families across our Air Force. So I want to pivot that discussion a little bit. I think we can absolutely talk about trying to get after suicide, but I think we need to really talk about how we get after all those things that lead to suicide as an end game or conclusion. The suicide isn't really necessarily a diagnosis as much as it's an end game. So how can we look at our force and figure out ways to get after the things that causes anxiety or depression or family issues or financial issues, all those other things? I think the Air Force has made some really good moves with, whether it's True North or all those other avenues we have out there. But I think that we need to kind of shift and pivot the discussion a little bit to get to the left of all those things that ultimately lead to suicide. Because if we focus just on suicide, we're going to miss a massive amount of other variables out there that, not saying that they're just as worse, but they also take a toll on our families. And if you look at any of the most recent lists out here for the last few years and about the most stressful jobs, usually you're going to see something about the military environment being somewhere in the top 5. We know that what we do is hard and rough, and we know it takes a toll. Yeah. So what we have to do is we have to partner, which I know Chief Master of the Air Force is already doing. We're talking with the folks in the Surgeon General community and talking with the folks in our resiliency cell, and they are putting together a lot of good data for us to, as a team, as a family of Air Force, we're trying to figure out as a family, how do we get to the left of any and everything that ultimately leads to suicide or any other adverse consequence. So I wish I had the answers to that.
So I think, sure, hit it on the head, which is we got to get left to it. So we've got to be preventative in what we do, and we have to keep our eye on the prize on what we want, which is strong airmen, resilient families. That's one of our Air Force strategic priorities, is to build strong airmen, resilient families, so that we can be our best. And as Sherd also mentioned, man, there's not a day that goes by that we don't talk about resiliency, that we don't talk about mental health, that we don't talk about how do we fix the culture, because this is very complex. If there was a way for us to get after numbers, we would have fixed it years ago. This is a complex situation and challenge that we're in when it comes to the numbers of suicides across the force and across our veteran community, where most of it's all relationship driven, most of it is financial, most of it is airmen or families who have had legal issues, and some of it is they're in a community where the team around them love them and care for them, but for whatever reason they see no out. Some of the challenges are that our nation as a whole is experiencing more mental health challenges than ever before. Our nation as a whole doesn't even have enough mental health providers to cover down outside of the fence line, which makes it even more challenging for us inside the fence line. We know for a fact that we don't have enough mental health providers. Right. Again, conversations with our SG community are happening. I was just talking to my boss about this last night when we're like, how can we get our hands around this? Can we do this telehealth thing where now airmen can talk to mental health, through virtual means, and that's where we need to go. We have our chaplains corps, we have other helping agencies, we have suicide hotlines. But what we need again also is that connection between all of us, between first sergeants, between teammates, between supervisors, between wingmen, where we can call somebody to try to create that culture. But man, this isn't easy stuff. What we're focused on is what can we fix? How can we fix a stigma? How can we provide avenues for our airmen? What I do think, Sherd, that we've got to get better at is our strategic communication, and that we've got to come up on comms and say to all of our airmen, here is how you can get. So outside of your culture within your organization, here are options for all of our folks, and we've got to just hit a strategic messaging campaign on how we get after this.
And I think you said something that resonated with me was the connection piece.
Yeah.
Because think about so just a question for all of you to think about, right? How many of us actually know our neighbors? Mm. How many of us actually check in on folks just out of the blue and say, hey, just call and check in and see how you're doing? I don't think it happens as much as it used to. I know I have a couple of friends out there that every week I can count on them to, like clockwork, to reach out and say, hey, buddy, check and see how you're doing. Whether it's my friend Anthony Brinkley or Todd Simmons or my partner in crime here, not crime, no crimes. My partner, Chief Master on the Air Force. We have to find ways to not just hope that people go out and try to pull information to help themselves, but we have to be that catalyst where we're reaching out and checking in on them. Yeah. And the more we get to know folks and have that connection piece, we'll be able to see when something may not necessarily be right. But even before that, the whole point is they can expect to get a phone call from you at a certain point. Man, that does a lot for people.
Do you even know your neighbor? Do you know your neighbor? When the U-Haul truck is coming in, or when the movers are bringing somebody into base housing or off base housing, do you even go introduce yourself? That's powerful. We got to get back to
over
that.
To the house or get
I still do. Yeah. So we got to get to that where we take care of each other.
All right. For our last question, I think both of you can answer this, as both of you are married to spouses that had very successful careers. But this comes from AJ Campbell. Was it hard for you and your husband being dual military and Army Air Force? I feel as we move up in the leadership chain, one of us is going to have to give in. Did you go through this?
Yes. Oh my gosh, did we? So we did. And I think it's a testament to where we are now, though, compared to where we were when my wife and I both were rising through the ranks. So we got to the point where after I wound up getting on the command chief list, she was nearing retirement. So when I was selected to go to a job as a command chief, she was not able to leave right then because she had to finish up her time before she retired. So we were separated for about 10 months. So here I am, all trying to do things at the wing, and she's back there with the 4 kids and the 2 dogs, trying to still work and get things done. But this was many years ago. Fast forward to all the changes and the focus that our predecessors put on taking care of families. We don't necessarily have that problem anymore. I think our efforts for one and our other services have been a little backwards to keep folks together.
Yeah.
So I think we are in a better place. And I guess another quick example was just both of us having to deploy at the same time, right? How often does that happen these days? We both left, and my parents wound up with the 4 kids. Now the kids didn't want to come back to us. They stayed with the grandparents for a little
I'm
bit.
sure they did.
But we finally got them back. Again, those are things that our experiences taught us, just like our predecessors' experiences taught them, that we need to do a little bit better. And I think that we're getting to that point when we do. And the thing is, I hear Chief Master Air Force say it all the time, we do those things, and we invest in making sure those people processes are right. But in return, there's a return on investment where you're able to be better at doing your job.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Of course it's challenging when and it doesn't have to be dual military, dual working, single parents, whatever, life is about choices and the priorities and what your goals are for that time. And for us, we had to, every season that we were in and every assignment that we were in, kind of balance out who was kind of doing what. We both couldn't be going 120 miles an hour and then expect the household to be fine. So either he went to school or I went to school, or he pushed it really hard at work, depending on where he was stationed, or I did, and we kind of just balanced each other like that. I will say that when I did meet him, I told him I was going to outrank him one day. He was in the Army sooner, but then we knew, and Ron purposely took assignments to ensure that our family stayed together. Again, choices, so he could have easily been on a sergeant major track, and he did not take those opportunities or those assignments because we needed to keep our family together. And so he made the best decision. And again, he's I tell people all the time, he's a way better NCO than I'll ever be. Strong leader, retired as an Army First Sergeant, Army E8, and had a phenomenal career. And the impact that he had, again, I tell people all the time, success is not based on the stripes on your sleeves or what's on your collar. Success is in the people that you've made an impact in their lives. And so he's made huge impact in the lives of many people. But we had to make choices all the time. And then when he felt like I was on that track to continue leading as a chief and then as a command chief, he took the step back so that he could cover down on some of the other things, which is a whole nother topic of discussion that we could go into on. Probably you, I'm sure, did it as I did, lived a very imbalanced life.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because, not for our own selves, but an imbalanced life, especially as a command chief, because I was trying to pour in and be the best chief that I could be. And when you're the best chief that you can be, it's hard to cover down on the house and all these other things, and then you're dysfunctional. So after my first command chief tour, I got big on, man, there's just no way I'm going to burn myself out. I got big on self-care, not feeling apologetic about it, making sure that I took time to PT, get all of my pillars strong so that I could be the best mom, spouse, airman, leader for everybody. So anyway, we've had to balance and take turns. It's what I'm sure all of you guys have to do.
And I got to tell you, I watched the Chief Master Sergeant Air Force live by exactly what she's saying, whether it's the duty hours that she sets for the day for the office, and with knowing that her team's going to come in either before and then stay after her, she makes it a point to make sure that they know that her family is important, and to reciprocate, their families are important as well. So, So not only do you take care of yourself, I've watched you make sure that the team gets off and takes a knee when they need to and take care of themselves. So that balance piece is important. And that was a great question. So hopefully you guys figure out how to get the balance down way before we did.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, what time is it?
It's closing time, ma'am. I think we got to refill these cups and let our people get out of here.
You have such a good PA voice in the back. But hey, I want to talk about that priority piece just real quick. So I'll give closing comments, and Shirt, I'm going to give it to you to give the final comments. One, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us for some coffee. If you joined us for 5 or 10 minutes, hopefully it was a good 5 or 10 minutes. Again, this is our opportunity to give some real talk and have some dialogue with you guys. But when it comes to priorities, one thing that I have learned is your calendar will often reflect what is important to you. And so I realize that if you're out on the flight line and you're the staff sergeant and you're turning wrenches, you don't feel like you have a whole lot of leeway with your calendar. But again, being deliberate about your time, the time that you do have shows where your priorities are.
Yes.
And so even for me, I used to have to schedule in, go have lunch with your daughter at the middle school. You know, actually, when they were in elementary, it was easier to put that in the calendar. When I went to middle school, my kids acted, you know, like they want to know. And then I'm like, oh, I will show up every day. So your calendar reflects it. And I used to have to tell the teachers, tell me when the big stuff is happening. I can't come out like every other parent to all the small things, but the big stuff I have to know. I will be there. So make sure that you're prioritizing the things on your calendar, because that's what's truly important to you. Spend time taking care of yourself so that you can take care of those around you and you can take care of your family.
Master Denton, would you mind coming over and bringing your cell phone with you, brother? I want to introduce y'all real quick to one of the newer members of our team who's been assisting, helping us out, and putting this all together.
I don't think they know any of the Team 19.
So I'm bringing some folks over here. So we got Master Sergeant Denton, PA extraordinaire. Then we have Master Sergeant. Hey, where you going, Master Sergeant Nathan Perry?
Glad to be over
We
here.
have 2 Nathan Perrys on Team 19.
Right.
I gotta be by the other
He's the better looking one. And then Master Sergeant Julia Barron is heading out over there. We call it Shadow. But I want to introduce you to the squad that makes all this happen. And
There's a few more Team
there's
19
more.
that is not here.
But I want to do something real quick. So you got your phone on you? Can we call Tom and Paul?
Oh, you are.
You're making this so much worse than it has to be.
So we're going to call Miss Tom and Miss Paula, who happen to be Sergeant Denton's parents, and just to say hello and, you know, make sure that they are watching this, because if anything went wrong today, it was his fault.
That's true.
Culture, people. We have fun. We work hard. We don't get a lot of sleep at times.
They might still be asleep. They're
retired.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah.
So are you watching the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force's live stream? Because I just got called out by Chief Perry, and he made me call you.
Hi, Miss Paula. Can you put on speaker?
I can.
Miss Paula, how are you doing? We're doing good. So I'm sitting here with the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force and Team 19. And well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your son with us. I got to tell you what he's done and what he's doing to message the words and the priorities of really the Air Force to the force of 600,000 plus is amazing. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, just for sharing them with us and for the way that you raised him. So anything we can ever do for you, please let us know.
Thank you so much.
Are you serious?
You have a great son, and he's doing great things for our Air Force. So thanks so much.
Oh my goodness, he took after his dad and his mom, because we were both in the Air Force.
Oh,
yes.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
Met at Langley Air Force Base, Vietnam era, right? Give or take.
Yes, at Langley. I was at Maxwell and then at Langley. And Tom, where were you? Just Langley, F-106.
This is
All right,
That's
Tom.
awesome.
Thank you guys for your
Thank
service as
you.
well.
Take care.
Thank you, and thanks for taking care of our son.
Whoop.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. This is
So
great.
the
Thanks,
the Air Force is family business. I'll tell you, I think my dad is out watching this, shout out, and my Aunt Krista. My dad will call me out and tell me when we've misspelled something on our stuff. But anyway,
Nat,
listen.
Mary. Hello,
Okay, we're
Mom,
getting the
Dad.
hook.
Yeah, we're getting the
Listen,
hook.
we are all part of Team 19. We'll get after this thing together. Keep engaging, keep making a difference, live on purpose. Love you guys. Cool.
Team 19.
All right, Chiefs are playing tonight.